Hi everyone. So today we will be going over the LeetCode problem number 15, threesome. So it says, given an integer array nums, return all the triplicates nums I, nums j, and nums k such that the I does not equal to j, I does not equal to k, and j does not equal to k. And num I plus num j plus num k equals to 0. Notice that the solution set must not contain duplicate triplets. So basically 3 elements in the array needs to add up to 0, but they can't have same index, right? So like for an example 1, our input is nums of array and our output is array of array that adds up to 0. Subarrays add up to 0. So in this case, let's figure out what our input is. Our input is nums. Let me just write I for input. Nums of array. And our output is subarrays that includes 3 element of array of nums array that adds up to 0, right? And our constraint is that I and j and k has to be different from each other, right? So in this case, we can also have a edge case saying if nums.length equals to 0, then we will just return empty array. Okay, let's take care of our edge case first. We can just say if nums.length equals to 0, return empty array. Okay, so in this case, what we have to do is, let's take this example for now. What we have to do is we would have to sort. So we would have to sort this array first. That way we can control if we want to change our pointer to the front or we want to go to the left. So let me explain it more. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna have 3 elements. One will be far right, so right there. Let's put where are you? Sorry, I'm having a hard time finding out. Let's just use this. And our another one would basically a left pointer, but another one would be like the whole element, right? So what we're gonna do is pick one as nums I, one at leftmost, and one at rightmost. So in order for this to work, we would have to first sort the array. So when we sort this above array, it will be, so let's write sort array, sort nums array. So if we were to sort it, then it will be -4, -1, -1, and it would be 0, comma 1, comma 2. So once we sort it, we can iterate over this and pick our first pointer as nums I, like I said earlier, and our left would be far left element, but it can't be nums I, right? Because our constraint says that it can't have same index. And our right would start from here, right? We'll start from here, and let's say we start here as our nums I, and our left is here, right? So what we're gonna do is check if we take sum of elements on these index, it would add to 0. So we'll say we'll take nums I plus nums left plus nums right, and then we'll see if it equals to 0. Then if it does, then we will push these 3 to another array. So let's say our array is, let's say our array is like result. So what we would have to do is we'll push result. We'll do, if it does, then we will do result.push. And the answer wants a subarrays of these elements. So what we're gonna do is push array with nums I, comma nums left, comma nums right. Okay. So since our result wants us to find multiple of this subarray, we have to keep going, right, until we have gone through the entire loop. So what's going to happen is that if, let's say, you know, they do add up to, like in this scenario, let's move this part out. Let's say we reach this scenario where it is 0, right? So at that point, we still have to keep looking. So once we push these values into our array, we can't just stop there, right? Because if you look at the example 1, they have 2 subarrays, so we have to keep looking. So once we find our subarray that adds up to 0, we still need to keep going. So what we would do is we would increment the left. So we'll do +1, and then we would decrement the right. So we'll do -1. So the reason we're incrementing left is because we would have to go keep going. So that means our left would go here, and our right would have to go forward, because on the right we're actually moving up and going backward, and then on our left we're actually moving forward, right? So we would have to keep iterating this loop until the left and the right are in the same position. So in order for us to be able to go through the entire loop and not keep going, like not have not have an infinite loop, we need to make a condition saying that once left is greater or equal to right, then we need to come out of this loop, otherwise it will keep going, right? So let's say our element is not, let's say our element is not smaller, or if it's not equals to 0, then either it has to be, so our sum, let's say if it is smaller than 0, then what we would do is we would actually increment the left, because since it's a sorted array, we know that if we keep going to the right, then that means that it's incrementing, right? But since if we keep going forward, it's incrementing, then we know that if we go backward, it's decrementing, right? So if you look at the right, it's going down, but if we go to the left, it's going up, right? So that's what our condition would be. Either it will go forward or backward depending on if we need to increase or decrease the sum. So let's go over the coding part, and hopefully that makes sense more to you. Okay, I know it's a bit harder to understand, but okay, let's just follow all the comments and then see what we would come up with. Okay, so what we have to do is, since it wants us to return an array, what we would do is assign array. So let's say result equals to that. Okay, so what we have to do, first we need to iterate over each element. So we're going to use the for loop. So we're going to say for let I equals to 0, I is less than nums dot length I plus plus. So we have to make sure that we have a condition put in place so that the elements are not the same. So it could be like, you know how in here that we do have a duplicates, right? But we want to just make sure that the previous index and the next index, previous value and the next value are not the same. Because if we have the same, let's say we have -1 here and -1 here, that means we'll have a duplicate results. Because if it is -1 and -1, we would try to find a value after that that would reach 0, right? So we don't want the duplicate subarray. So in order for us to make sure that doesn't happen, we want to make sure that our previous value and the present value are not the same. So what we would do is, if nums at I does not equal to nums I minus 1, or nums equals to 0, then we can assign our left. So we do left equals nums dot I, so not nums dot I, it'll be I plus 1, and our right equals to nums dot length minus 1, because our right, we are going backward. So before I forget, I need to make sure I sort my nums, so I can just do nums dot sort, pass in A minus B. Okay, so we have assorted nums, and we also need to, I think that's about it. So in order for us to go through this over and over again and make sure that we don't go through infinite loop, we want to make sure that our left is smaller than the right, right? Because our left index always has to be smaller than the right index for us to continue this loop. So what we're gonna do is, while left is smaller than the right. So in here we would do let sum equals nums left plus nums right plus nums at I. So the reason we're assigning nums inside the while loop instead of on line 37 is because we want to update the sum as we go. Like as we increment or decrement the right, we want to make sure we keep updating the sum. if we were to put on line 37, we would not have access to the sum anymore unless you redeclare the sum somewhere. But anyhow, so okay, once we have a left the sum, then we have to decide if the sum is 0. So what would we do is say if sum equals to 0, then we found our first subarray, right? Then what we would do is we do result dot push what we need to push. So we need to push, let's just copy that and replace the plus with comma, right? So do comma but like I said earlier, once we have found the elements that adds up to 0 and we have pushed the result onto our subarray onto our result, what we need to do is change the left and the right, because we have already found that, but we need to continue finding another subarrays. So what we have to do is say while nums at left equals to nums at left plus 1, then we would increment the left. While nums at right equals to nums at right minus 1, right decrement. Okay, so we also need the while loop to check if our left is same as the left plus 1, and then if it is, then we would have to increment the 1, increment the left. And same thing with the right, because if right is same as the one before it, then we have to decrement the right. The reason we're doing this is because if we don't do this, we would encounter duplicate of same subarray, like we did for this part where we checked that if the two values like next to each other are the same, like it will result in a duplicate subarrays. And same goes for the left and right. If like this is left, and then if we move forward and if it is still -1, we want to make sure we avoid those situation, because that will result in duplicate subarrays. So after we do that, we still need to increment and decrement the left. Equals left of 1, and then we do right plus minus equal 1. Okay, so now we have found one subarray, but we have to keep going, right? So let's see, we have else if statement if sum is less than 0. So we have a condition where the sum is less than 0, right? So since our array is sorted and we know that our sum is less than 0, the way for us to try to make our sum go higher is to increment the left. The reason we decide to increment the left is because as we go more and more left, it will increment the value because it is sorted, right? So in this case, we would just increment the left. And we can do else. So else, that means that the sum is greater than 0. In that case, we would have to decrement the right, because if you look at the array, what's happening is like the value on the right goes down when you move backward. So in this case, we would actually decrement 1. So that's why it is very important to sort the array, right? Okay, so after that, I believe we can just return the result. Okay, so let me quickly check if I missed anything. Result that sorted. Okay, goes to 0, result.push. Okay, so that makes sense to me. Let's try to run the code and see if it works. Okay, so I'm getting this error. Oh, okay, let's try to do it again. It's accepted, and let's try to submit this code. Okay, so we passed. Yeah, so one key point for us to think about for this problem is that we want to make sure our array is sorted, and also we need to make sure that the elements they are not the same. I mean, they could be same in the overall array, but like the neighbors, they can't be same. Otherwise, we will result in duplicate subarrays. So hope that's not very confusing. Yeah, so if you just look at the code and try to go by line and check what each outcome is. You can console log and debug it to see if that helps. But so that's how you would solve this problem, and I'll see you guys in the next video.